Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual. I'm joined today by a special guest, Denise Duffield-Thomas, the money mentor for entrepreneurs. Denise believes that one extremely impactful way to change the world is to put more money in the hands of entrepreneurs who want to make a difference. Her highly rated books, Lucky Bitch, Chillpreneur, Get Rich Lucky Bitch, and her newest book, Chill and Prosper, give a fresh and funny roadmap to living a life of abundance without burnout. And her Money Bootcamp has helped over 8,500 students from all around the world. So she's achieved some amazing things, and I'm so glad that she's joining me today. Denise, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate being here.
Fantastic. Well, if we could start, could you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to Chillpreneur and Chill and Prosper and so on?
Well, I grew up in Australia in a small town, a small beach town that's very similar to Home and Away, actually, if you've watched that show.
The TV show, okay.
The TV show Home and Away, yeah. You know, small beach town. And I don't come from an entrepreneurial family. You know, my mum had me very young. And we moved around a lot and, you know, she would be a waitress or a cleaner. But there was just something, I think I was just a very creative kid. And I started my first business when I was 9, selling bracelets. But I remember the joy of not only coming up with the idea and making it, but actually selling. And I remember riding around on my bike and I would see a group of kids and I'd be like, well, they want to buy my bracelets, you know, and I'd ride up to them and be like, look at this cool bracelet. Do you want to buy one? And it was just that pure, innocent joy of selling. And I remember talking about it at school for show and tell. And my teacher was like, oh, this is a teachable moment, and was like, well, how much does it cost to buy, you know, your materials, and how much are you selling them for? And it was the first time I felt like I'd really made a mistake. You know, and I felt really embarrassed about it because for me, actually, it wasn't, the motivation wasn't necessarily the money. It was the joy of creation and sharing it with other people was the big thing for me. And so I felt quite embarrassed about my financial acumen at age 9 because I felt really dumb. I felt like, oh my God, I'm basically selling them for what it cost me to make. You know, and so it was a really kind of harsh lesson. But I continued that pattern of wanting to share things with people. And I was really good at kind of convincing my friends to start projects with me. And some of them would never really pan out. I'd be like, guys, we're going to sell horse poo. Like, this is the thing. And so I'd kind of rope everyone into coming and like collecting horse poo. But I was never a really good completer finisher. And that's true even still today. And so that was just kind of always my personality. But I really struggled in my 20s to find my thing. You know, it was, you know, like the early 2000s, internet stuff was very new. And I'd heard about, you know, online courses and ebooks and things like that. And so I decided to write an ebook in 2002. And it was, you couldn't sell it yourself. You know, you could barely PDF things yourself back then. Yeah. So I had to go through an ebook broker to sell this ebook, and it was called Internet Dating Tips for Men. And because I was doing internet dating, which was very new and a little bit controversial, and I was living in the UK, and I was like, man, everyone sucks at this, you know. Yeah. And I think that's all of my early businesses were like, well, I can help someone with this, you know. And so that was kind of my first online business. But most of my 20s, I really spent being in jobs that were very frustrating, hearing little rumors about this entrepreneurial world that was out there, but not knowing enough entrepreneurs to normalize it for myself. And also the technology just wasn't quite there to do it. And so my first online course was in 2009. And again, the technology was so hard, you know, like no Zoom. So we had to use, it was called Instant Teleseminar, and each call would cost me about $80 to run, which is a lot of money back then. And, you know, I had to build my own website. There's no drag and drop stuff. My online portal everyone had the same password. Just all of those things were pretty simple. But also I was just frustrated. I was like, when is this going to happen for me? And when am I going to find my idea? And I went into the world of coaching when I was about 30, and I immediately loved it, and I'd known about the world of coaching for a long time. I had my first life coach at 19, but I was secretly worried. In my friendship group, it was just seen as very, does wanky translate?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just seemed like, this is just a scam. It's not a real, industry to go into. A lot of my friends were in consulting, or my friends back at home were, nurses and teachers. And they were always just kind of like, oh, Denise, you and your, little scams that you're trying to come up with. But
back to selling horse poo. Yeah.
Yes, right. And because I was kind of in my 20s, I was always like, oh, guys, I'm doing a medical experiment for money, or I'm doing all these things. And they were always just like, oh, my God. I was selling MLM for a little bit. And it was because I was just seeking, I wanted creativity and freedom, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know anybody who was in that world. And I think once I found a few of those groups, especially women in business, and I think this is so key, when I first kind of discovered these entrepreneurial groups, I'd be the only woman in the room, and I'd be, in my 20s, everyone else would be in their 40s. And so once I found groups of women in business, it normalized it enough for me to think that I could do it for myself. And once I sort of got into the world of coaching and got over my, embarrassment, I guess, about it, everything kind of quickly snowballed from there, because I realized, I like, business coaching rather than career coaching. I like working with people at this particular stage of business, and it very much kind of snowballed. But I realized that money was something that people were really stuck on, and not money from an accounting point of view, but money from a mindset point of view. And that's where I started to get really interested in it. And, 12 years later of being in that space of mindset, I still find new nuances all of the time. And so now what I'm doing is exploring other little pockets of like bringing together all my British clients and saying, what money blocks have you got from growing up in Britain? What money blocks have you got from being in the construction industry or from being an artist? And finding those little pockets. And that's what I do now. So I have my online course, and I have my books, all about money mindset.
I love that. And it's such an interesting journey where, as you say, you came from a background and a setup where you didn't have the input and the examples around you to kind of see really what entrepreneurship looked like. And in fact, as you say, although I'm sure your teacher meant well,
Yes.
Not super helpful really in terms of nurturing you through that journey. Reminds me of a similar experience that I had when I was studying business studies, where the intention is good, but actually it doesn't kind of nurture you in the right way. Although arguably, perhaps, the fact that you remember it and the fact that you've ended up going into money mindset, maybe that was exactly what you needed. But I think that it's such a challenging area, is that area of money. You've worked in relationships. Money is one of those other big causes of stress and areas in which we've all got our own hang-ups and bad experiences, whether it's bad dates or really tough experiences in our financial positions. So you've been studying this and working with so many different business owners across a variety of geographies and industries and so on. Managing money clearly is a big source of stress for many. Why is that? What's the fundamental root cause of that sort of feeling?
Well, we have been told in a million different ways, it's really hard to make money, or you have to work hard to make money. So I would say that's probably one of the fundamentals. I do think this is going to shift through the generations though. And the reason why, for kind of our generation, I'm guessing we're a similar-ish age, I grew up without the internet. I grew up where if you were an entrepreneur, it meant you had to fund everything yourself. Like if you were making a widget, you would have to raise money to make it, store it, ship it, do everything yourself, right? And so there was this shift probably, for me, it was in my late teens, early 20s, where it was like, oh, you don't have to leverage, like it's not a one-to-one relationship. And that's only grown over the last 20 years since I've, been in this world, is your input and your output. It's not a linear formula.
Yes.
And I think that breaks our brain a little bit.
Yeah.
The math doesn't math. It's just like, what? And I think that's a really big thing about the, analog childhood and this digital world. And I still sometimes find it hard to get my head around, but I could see my entrepreneurial journey. When I made like $250,000 a year, and I remember thinking, I really want to be a millionaire, but how am I going to work 4 times harder? Mm-hmm. Because that's how you've been taught.
The linear thinking, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, well, another day, another dollar. You put the work in, you get the output out, and we know that that's not true. You could create something once and make millions of dollars from it, or depending on how you set up your business, it does not compute, I think. And so then you go into the other layers of that, of what did your parents do? How did they make money? What's your experience of how people are allowed to make money? How much are you allowed to leverage your time with staff, getting help, leverage with technology? That's all available to all of us now, but we all resist it in different ways, right? And I resisted getting help for a long time because I was like, no, I have to do it myself or it doesn't count. Or some people are real connectors and they're like, well, it doesn't count unless I'm sitting in front of someone. That's real money. Or it doesn't count unless I'm, like suffering for it in some way. And that's totally dependent on our own personalities and what our backgrounds are. But it really comes down to this thing of, we've just heard so many times, you have to work hard to make money. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I remember seeing you talk on a video where you talked about that kind of those money blocks that you have at different stages in the journey, and sort of hitting that first one when you got to about 120,000. I think you said that in the video you talked about how it was kind of the level of income that your rich uncle essentially was at, and as a result feeling like surpassing that was a weird thing. And then when you did get past that, get into a similar one at around $250,000 where you felt like, as you say, how am I going to work 4 times as much? And I think those just keep happening, right? Like as you grow the business, you kind of keep on hitting new blocks. And I always think it's a weird thing as well that you can't just go from 1 to 1 million, because the steps that are required to get there, like in terms of being able to sell and work out what the product, get the right product market fit, etc., require you to do some of those early steps to get to your first, 6 figures and so on, requires getting the sales right. Whereas then getting to 1 million and 10 million requires systems and structure, which if you put that in too early, actually can hold you back from being able to iterate and so on. And I think it's a really hard shift to go through as an entrepreneur. When it comes to that kind of money management and the stress associated with it, like how bad can that get? What are some of perhaps you can share through examples of cases where you've seen like this fundamentally having a negative, life-changing impact for people?
Well, I think that's the second block that I see a lot, actually, is this idea that you can help people or make money. But it's not okay to do both, really. And even if you intellectually know, okay, the more people I help, the more money I make, we all understand that. But there's still something there where we go, yeah, but it's still not kind of cool. Like there's a limit to how much I can make. Otherwise, I really don't care that much. And this is where, if you have this, it's definitely amplified in particular industries. And where I see it a lot is with my clients in the health field. So they're health coaches. They might help people with, problems after having babies or some sort of challenge. And they feel incredibly guilty making money out of helping people. Right. And I think it's worse for women, to be honest, absolutely, because we are told from a young age in lots of ways, it's to share and to be caring and to not expect things in return. It can be amplified if you come from a religious background, because it's more blessed to give than receive. And what I see happening there is people start to go, they say things like, I don't care about the money. I just want to help people, as if they have to be mutually exclusive. And then it will be amplified back to you. It will be echoed back to you by your audience. And you'll hear things like, well, if you really cared, this should be free. And then the guilt is even worse because you just go, well, I should be helping people for free. And what I see with people especially with that kind of nurturing, caring personality, they stay in their day job for so long because they can never make money out of their business because they undercharge, they overdeliver, they feel guilty about putting a price tag on it at all. And they really, really get stuck. But I would say most entrepreneurs have that in some way. But it can be very personal. So you might think, I can be a good parent or I can make a lot of money, but I can't do both. I can be an environmentalist. I can very care deeply, or make money. I can be, politically aware, or I can be, left-leaning, or I can be, a citizen of the world, or make money, but I can't do both. And it's because, most of us don't have examples of nice, normal, down-to-earth, or caring, or ethical people who make money. We don't have enough examples of that. And so we do think it's a binary choice. And this is where people, they hold themselves back because they feel like just deep down, it's just unethical for me to make more money. And I find that is one that usually carries with people's journeys. They'll go, oh, okay, no, I get over it. And then they'll just hit it again and again of going, no, this is really unethical now, or it's unseemly. And for me, I started feeling really guilty about making money because my mom was still in a job. And my first speaking gig, I didn't know how much to charge. And they called me and said, what's your rate? And I was like, what's your budget? And they were like, it's $500. And I went, what a coincidence. That's my rate. And I was like thrilled to be paid $500 to speak. And I told my mom, and I was like, oh my God. And she said, that's my weekly wage at the nursing home. And I felt like a piece of crap. Like, she wasn't shaming me, but I could just see her going, whoa. And I was like, I am a piece of shit. Like, I felt horrible about it. And so when I got to, I don't know, multiple six figures, whatever, I went, I actually can't sleep at night anymore knowing my mum is doing this, the work, because she was getting up at 4:30 in the morning and, working really, really hard. So I said to her, look, I want to retire you and I'll replace your job income and I'll pay for whatever you need, but just don't work anymore. And she was like, yeah, fine. Yeah, of course. So for the last 6-7 years, she has a guest suite at our house, but she actually lives in a motorhome and travels around. She's actually on an 8-week cruise at the moment.
Nice.
And that was a small price to pay. And then we did the same for Mark's mum because she was a single mum too. And that helped us sleep at night and earn more money. And I really think that skyrocketed my income because I felt so guilty about it.
I love that as a brilliant example because we could look at that and say, well, actually, that wasn't a required action. Yes, lovely and great and whatever. But at the same time, we could look at it as almost a negative response to a guilty emotion that actually the underlying issue is, actually, should you feel like this? And, the fact that it's your mum versus, most people on the planet that are paid in that way, should that make much difference? What I love is that your response demonstrates that removing that mental block for you, taking that obstacle of thinking, then resulted in you feeling better, and it's good for your family and so on, just objectively. But actually, the fact that you can then make more money as a result, I can totally see how it would remove that obstacle, and suddenly you no longer feel guilty about asking for more than $500 or more for speaking, because you're like, oh, but I've totally done this thing, so it's fine.
Yeah.
And if anything, I suspect that. In fact, I'll ask you the question, which is, did you find that then it kind of almost gave you an increased motivation because you're thinking, well, now I'm funding my own income, but also that of my mum as well, and making sure that she could continue to do that? How did that play out in terms of affecting how you then thought about business and making money?
Well, first of all, therapists always have a field day around this, right? Because they're like, you're continuing this pattern of, being the oldest child. And, I felt very responsible for my mum as a kid, so I'm aware that it's an unhealthy pattern in a way, right? It's that part of my personality that feels really responsible for people. But I do see it as it was an amplifier for me, because I was like, I don't think I could have made more money feeling that block and feeling that guilt. And, so it works out for me in that way. But And I'm not going to lie too, because my husband works in the business now too, right? And so there are points where I feel the burden of that sometimes. And I do think that's something that people are afraid of, especially women, is what's it going to be like being the breadwinner? And it does sometimes feel like that, of going, wow, everyone, I'm responsible for everybody. And I have to do a lot of work to make sure that that's clean for me. And I go, I choose to do this. I choose to do it. But yeah, a lot of women are scared of being the breadwinner, and what would that mean? And I see it as a massive privilege. And, it's funny because my mum, she has this beautiful free life. She'll come and she'll hang out with the kids for a bit. And when she's done, she's just like, bye. And, she cashes out her superannuation to go on trips because I'm her retirement plan, really. And I can see that as a burden, but I do see it as a really beautiful privilege. That I get to do. But I understand now, this is a really fascinating thing. Growing up, I would see my grandfather, he'd come home from work because he was a breadwinner, and he would be like, he'd go into his rumpus room, he'd, change the TV, he'd expect the dinner on the table. And I get it now.
It's okay, yeah.
I get it, because sometimes I think, you guys should serve me. Yes, get me a cup of tea. And so it's given me compassion for that mental burden, I think, that men have usually had to, in some cases, had to bear. And I kind of just, I can handle this, I can handle this. And I choose to do it.
Yeah, nice. That's really interesting. And I think it points to another part of stress around money management, right? Is that one part of it is that having to make sure that you're in a position to look after yourself and make sure there's food and shelter and so on for yourself as a functioning adult. But then, particularly over the course of your life, you normally accumulate dependents, whether it's children or parents that you have to then care for and support. And then actually, as you grow a business, you've then got employees and their families and so on. And in some cases with some overlap, particularly when you start hiring family members like your husband and so on. So that creates a whole constellation of stress when things get hard. And that's something that I see a lot for business owners, is that they want to grow, they want to have an amazing impact. They'll happily put the hours in and even enjoy putting in the hours in, occasional evenings, weekends, etc. It's like, yeah, this is good. And then when things go bad, and particularly when the money starts to dwindle or the revenue tanks or whatever, that's where everything shifts. Suddenly they're having to work hard and they're stuck in the business and they're approaching burnout, and they struggle to maintain nice, supportive, amicable relationships with those around them because it's coming from a more negative place. I know that your recommended approach to money management, financial planning to reduce stress and takes a more holistic approach. Can you share, what does that look like, or how would you advise business owners to reduce the stress around management and when they're in those kind of situations?
Totally. And the first thing to say, I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not an accountant. So I'm very much in that mindset space. But I know that not getting help around those things is a massive mindset issue. I see people who don't hire bookkeepers and accountants out of shame and embarrassment. They don't want people to see behind the scenes. They think that they're really messy and imperfect, and it's, embarrassing. And I remember that was me in my first year. I found my bookkeeping incredibly stressful, and I hired somebody, and she would say, just send me your receipts. And I'd be like, no, I'll clean it up first. So, let me get it. And she was like, box them up, send it to me. It will be like Christmas for me, getting this in. But I was so intimidated by it. And then the first time I met with a financial advisor, we had a little baby at that stage. And I remember thinking, well, I'll go and change the baby and I'll let the men talk about money. And I just went, what? And I couldn't believe that it came into my mind, because the only reason why I was seeing a financial advisor is because my business was doing so well that we had money to invest. And I remember in that moment, I said, Mark, can you go and change the baby and I'll tell these guys about my business? And it really felt like this power move for me, because I realized I had this identity that I wasn't good with numbers, which I'm not. I've got dyscalculia, which is dyslexia for numbers. I was irresponsible with money, or I didn't understand those systems, and the world is for men anyway, and they're not going to understand my business, and they're going to think it's silly and frivolous and all of those things. And I see that all the time. People have hang-ups about that and fears that are real and not real. So if you had bankruptcy in your family, you might have that fear that will happen again. Sometimes there's this roller coaster effect where I've heard it called the shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, where it's like a working class person makes a lot of money. Their kids become, doctors, lawyers, accountants. Their kids are wealthy kids, trust fund kids who are too far removed. And so they're the ones that lose it. But I see these patterns playing out, right? Of going, we swing because our parents were frugal, so then we spend heaps of money, or vice versa. And these patterns just occur again and again. And so our job really is just to be aware of those patterns so we can break them, but also not feel like we have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect with money to make money. You'll make mistakes for sure. And you can find people to help you with those things and help you manage money. And I just met with our financial advisor last week, actually, and it was really great because he's kind of our age and he's second generation. It's his dad's firm. And I was like, this is so cool. Like, he was telling us about the markets and showing us these things. Like, this is what's happening in America and this is where the lag will be in Australia. And I was like, you're a big freaking nerd. And I love that I don't have to think about this. And you can think about it and I don't have to. And it was very empowering, but I would have been incredibly intimidated by him, even probably 5 years ago, and not wanted to ask stupid questions and things like that. So everyone's got to have that self-awareness to go, why can't I have that? Or why don't I trust myself with more money? Why am I not allowed to make more money?
Yeah, I can see that. And I think that's great advice particularly around being okay with not having all the answers and being able to get help, particularly when it comes to money management, financial planning and so on, which are areas of huge breadth and depth. And it's very easy to end up, frankly, a bit confused by it all when people are talking about EIS schemes and VCTs and everything's got its own little 3-letter acronym that seems purposefully designed to keep everyone out. And then someone who's skilled in it and has got that knowledge can make it look much simpler to navigate. I mean, for some people, they'll be thinking, yeah, I'd love to have a financial advisor and I'd love to have a bookkeeper, an accountant and so on. I simply can't afford that though. What would you say to those kind of business owners that are in that kind of mindset and stage of their business?
Well, here's the cool thing about bookkeepers and accountants is that they charge in 6-minute increments. So they are actually used to working on a lot of different projects. And what, for me, hiring a bookkeeper, it wasn't even that many transactions a month. And she didn't mind. But for me, it was this hugely symbolic hire. And I felt like there's someone on the payroll besides me. And I honestly wanted to impress her. Like, at the end of the month, I'd be thinking, she's going to be looking at stuff. It just was an extra layer of accountability because I could kind of let it slide. I'm like, well, I'm not paying myself, so no one needs to know. But suddenly having someone that I had to pay for, and it was, I think it was like literally 5 hours a month to start off with. So it was a very, very small amount of money. And this is the mistake that we sometimes do as entrepreneurs. We think it's all or nothing. It's like, well, what would I get a full-time employee to do? And it's like, well, you don't need a full-time employee. Or you could start with a VA who does very similar work for a lot of people, and a couple of hours on your business they'll handle that. And same with bookkeepers and accountants, is it's okay to start small. And for me, it was just this hugely symbolic thing. I was like, you know, they got my registration from the government, you know, but she was a really positive person. She was like, well, let's register you for GST, you know, like VAT. In Australia, you don't have to register until your business makes over, I think, $75,000, something like that. And she was like, you'll get there. So why don't we start the paperwork now? And I was like, wow, she thinks I'm a real business person. Like, it was just so validating to do that. And people listening, it might not be, you know, a bookkeeper or an accountant that's your symbolic hire. It might be a graphic designer or an assistant or someone else that's just outside of yourself that you will make the money for someone else. You know, like I would never have like not paid her, but I could have gone years without paying myself easily.
Yeah. I love that. And I think also it's almost living up to their image of you as well. You know, when you say that you've got a bookkeeper saying, oh, you're gonna be getting to this level where you've got to pay sales tax, it's almost in you, it's both giving permission and a bit of a goal of, okay, well, now I've got to. Like, if I'm interested for this thing, I'm not going to go through all this pain and additional cost and so on and then come under. And I think a lot of business is kind of removing each of those bottlenecks, and whether they're mindset related or systemic in your business or whatever, it's kind of just removing that next one, right? So, I mean, from the work that you've done with literally thousands of business owners and people, like, what does good look like when this kind of money mindset and management is done well? What does that look like? How does that show up?
It looks like acceptance of your imperfections. I just hosted a 2-day retreat with some of my private clients, and it's the same thing. I'll say to them, you know, what's stopping you from going to the next level? Oh, I've got to be more organized. No, you don't. Everyone thinks that there's the version of ourselves today, and then there's the more successful version. And somehow we've undergone this metamorphosis where we're this perfect version of ourselves. And we can accept imperfections in other people, in our clients, in our friends, in our peers, all of those things. But still we think, no, it's really got to require me to really get my shit together. I have to get really organized. And I know myself, you know, I make a lot of money. I am still so imperfect the same way I was in my first year of business. I'm still really disorganized. You know, I make a lot of mistakes. I can be really impulsive with things. And so the more that you can accept who you are and build your business around that, then you can just make money, not even regardless of all your flaws, but it's just like you realize that you don't need to be perfect to make money, and you'll make tons of mistakes. Even there's no making it, you know, you'll still make the mistakes.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so easy to idolize and look up to certain role models, entrepreneurs, etc., and through comparison say, oh, well, I'm so X or Y, like I'm so, as you say, I'm so disorganized, or I'm not as creative or innovative as that, and whatever. And almost the very act of doing that kind of makes it true, right? It's by giving that self-talk and convincing yourself that you're not able to achieve those results because of that, it kind of makes it true. It's the opposite side of the coin to when you've got a bookkeeper saying, oh, well, you're going to hit this level. And you go, oh, am I? Okay, then.
Yeah.
And flipping it round. So for clients that you've worked with where perhaps there's a lot of baggage, I suppose, for want of a better expression, like that there's a lot of holding back. And even though, like, theoretically they see that, nobody's perfect, and I'll accept these things in the people around me, and I get that a load of my mindset is down to how I was brought up and, you know, all this sort of stuff. What are some of the obstacles that they still hold back on? What are the blocks that seem hardest to shift, and how do you tend to overcome those?
Well, this is where it starts to get into the nuances, right? This is where it starts to become really fun, because I'm certified in a method called Sacred Money Archetypes, and it looks at 8 different money personalities. And we don't, have time to get into all of them, but every archetype, once you get over the big one of everyone's got work hard for money and, you know, all those things, then you start to get into the nuances of personality. So for example, accumulators are people who can be extremely frugal and very worried about money. They can be very skeptical. They want to know the how, and they want to know it's all going to work out. And so they can often get really stuck in analysis paralysis because, they'll see other people do it and they'll be like, but how? And can you guarantee the exact same results for me if I follow the process? And I'm one of those people, I'm like, just suck it and see, just try. And they're like, but how do I know it's going to work out? Yeah. And so they are really driven by fear. And I will see accumulators, it doesn't matter how much money they have. It doesn't matter how much money they have in the bank. If you talk to them for 5 minutes, you would be convinced that they are one day from being homeless on the street. Because it's like, this really needs to work out. And I got this when I was in a mastermind with, I was teaching this woman, she was very pregnant and she was like, this business has to work out. And I was sleepless through this whole 3-day event because I was thinking, how am I going to help this pregnant lady, save her unborn child and not be homeless on the street because her business hasn't worked out. And I finally said to her, look, I said, I've got to know, how long have you got until you run out of money? Because in my mind, I'm like, I was always happy week to week. I was like, whatever, easy come, easy go. And she sat there and she went, okay, 6 years until I completely run out of money if I earn not a single cent. And I was like,
yeah, and I keep rushing
kidding
off the
me?
same. Yeah.
Yes, I was like, are you kidding me? I've been sleepless over these last couple of days because I was thinking, because for me, a couple of days, I'd be like, oh, I'll figure something out in a couple of days. And it really just brought home to me that it is real for accumulators, that if something doesn't work out, it's dire for them, right? And on the other side of it, you'll have mavericks, and mavericks are like, whatever, I can just manifest it tomorrow if I put my mind to it. And so you'll have mavericks who are in this feast or famine cycle. They'll grow a big business because they're very magnetic and people will give them money. And then they go, I'm bored of that now. I can't be bothered. And they'll burn it all down, like a business that's working great because they get bored or because there's that devil on the shoulder go, just get rid of it. What could we, let's start from scratch. Because it's the adrenaline of it is so exciting for them. And then, there's 6 other personalities and they all have their different things too. And so I stopped giving business advice a long time ago unless I know someone's money personality because it completely depends. Hiring is very different for different archetypes. Connectors, for example, and nurturers, they hire people who are terrible because they feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
They hire friends and family. They hire people who are hopeless because they feel sorry for them. And they'll hire people and pay the money and the person's not even doing a job for them. The person's just chuffed off with their money. And they go, I feel so bad. Rulers find it really hard to hire people because it's quicker and easier to do it myself. I have to do all the things myself. Accumulators struggle to hire because it's cheaper to do it myself. Celebrities want an entourage and they hire people who are really fun and sexy, but, they need to hire boring people, but they find them too boring to hire. So and people can do a quiz to find out. It's a free quiz, denisedt.com/quiz to plug that. But it's really different. And that's where you get into the nitty gritty of it and the nuances and to find out. And it's really fun when I have a conversation with people because I go, oh, I can see exactly why you're scared about growing your business. And I can see exactly why you're sabotaging hiring. And I can see exactly why you're sabotaging your finances or your marketing because they do it in a very predictable way. Yeah. And mavericks are like, no, I'm not predictable. And I'm like, you are? And I know exactly what to say to you to use reverse psychology. And that's when it becomes really fun. And I think this is anyone listening, if you think, oh, money mindset, I don't want to open that can of worms. I don't want to look at it. If you can come at it from a place of curiosity, then it becomes super fun because then you go, oh, that's why I do that. Okay. And then you can shift it and change it, or you can just design your business around it. Like if you're a maverick, it's really hard to have a business model like a membership because it feels like handcuffs. It's not like, oh, get better at commitment. It's like, no, just design your business so it flows for you. And that's really the crux of my book too, Chill and Prosper. It's not like do business like me because I live in Australia and I'm really chill. No, it's do business in alignment with your personality. Otherwise, it's going to feel really hard.
Love that. Love that. Yeah, I think that's such great advice around getting your business and the model and the very structure, the essence of it, to map up to your preferences and how you prefer to think and so on. You mentioned the accumulator. I can totally imagine that the flip side is that for accumulator, having a membership type business is great because it gives them so much security and confidence of future income and so on, so that they can feel more secure rather than feeling like, oh, well, we made 100,000 last month, but that was all down to one big event. That might not get repeated. Therefore, we can't grow and we can't do these things. And so,
Exactly.
I absolutely love that. That's really, really awesome.
On that example too, accumulators can be very skeptical about marketing. But once you tell them and say, these are the statistics, and once they can geek out on those metrics and go, okay, the churn rate of my membership would be this, and, I need to have this amount of people to see it. Once they get that, accumulators can be amazing business people because they can see how the machine works, but they just have to get over their initial skepticism that, this isn't valid, or are people going to think I'm scamming them, or, they can just be very skeptical about marketing and the world of entrepreneurship in general. But once they get it, they're amazing at that kind of stuff and being realistic, right? Whereas you say to people, 2% conversion rate, the alchemists are just like, just manifest the people. And they do, but you can see too where business partnerships can clash and couples can clash, right? Because it's like, where's your business plan? I'm just going to manifest the clients. And it can be very stressful if you don't understand and appreciate each other's money personalities.
Yeah, I really, really like that. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Well, there's so much that we could dive into, Denise.
Yes.
But unfortunately, we're coming up for time. But I do want to make sure that we identify where can people learn more about you and the approaches that you recommend and various resources. I mentioned denisedt.com/quiz. People can check out the quiz to explore their money personalities, and I think that's a great resource. There's your website. But if people were to pick one of your books, which one should they start with? Where would you recommend that people start in terms of learning more from you?
Yeah, thank you. Denise DT is my website, and also I'm really easy to find on social media, just Denise DT, Instagram, Twitter. I love collecting money stories, so I always love when people DM me their, ahas, or tell me a story about their life and their money. My books, Lucky Bitch, is very much about kind of manifesting and being in that energy where it looks like luck on the outside, but there's all of those little manifesting kind of tricks to kind of put you in that space where synchronicities kind of are inevitable. So that's a really easy read. Get Rich Lucky Bitch is specifically about money blocks and talking about those blocks like working hard and things like that. And then Chill and Prosper is my newest one, and that's specifically about business. So designing your marketing and your business model and your pricing to suit your personality. So you can read them in that order, or you can just pick up whichever one sounds good to you. And they're on Audible and Kindle and paperback, just, the normal places where you can find books. And I love when people, as I said, reach out and tell me their stories, because I'm just like, that's what I love about my work. I'm just like, tell me your secrets. tell me all your money mistakes, because I find it fun, and I'm hoping that people listening start to see that from a place of fun and lightness and curiosity, because it still works. You don't have to go somewhere and walk on hot coals and cry to have a breakthrough around your money. Like, you can literally just be like, oh, that's fun to know about. And so hopefully my resources can help. And I'll just say one thing about the quiz, because
Sure.
This was a really fun thing. 8 personalities. We designed a set and costumes for each of the personalities. And so we filmed it at my farm, but each room, and I'm talking, we had a color scheme, but it was like little things on the shelves were related to those archetypes. So for the connector, we did like a rainbow happy theme, and there was like thank you cards in the background, because connectors, if they get thank you cards, they're probably going to display them. And, pictures of my family and Poppy from Trolls. And then like the Maverick set was a world traveler theme. So it was like, you know, because they're just adventurers. And, you know, the celebrity set was really hard for me because I'm not a celebrity, but it was all shiny, beautiful things and designer shoes and handbags. And so I think people will really enjoy, you know, and I show the different sets as well once you kind of get your archetype. But that was a really fun creative project of putting myself into those personalities. And I could really feel the energy of that. You know, I really feel like when I was in the nurturer set, I was like, oh my God, I really love you, nurturer. I love you so much. And then I would take off, you know, I had a grandma sweater with like a little like cat pin. And then I would take it off and I'd feel really sad to leave that. And then I'd put on my like leather jacket of the Maverick. And I was like, who was that? You know, and I think there's something really cool in business about really understanding not only who you are, but really understanding your audience and what their fears are around money. And so, yeah, it's a really fun, you know, free course that you get after the quiz. And I could talk about it forever because I had so much fun even just picking the set things, you know, picking all the little bits.
That comes across. I love it. I can't wait to complete it myself. In fact,
and tell me what you are. You have to let me know.
I have an idea, but it'll be interesting to see how it comes out. But yeah, we're meeting up in person in about a week.
Yes.
So I'll be able to share with you then.
Yes, exactly. And because it's really a combination of your top three too, right? So you could be an accumulator ruler, or you can be an accumulator celebrity where you like go back and forth between, I want all the nice things, I don't deserve nice things, and I have to, you know, eat beans. And it's fascinating to see how those different flavors play out in people. And yeah, I live for that kind of thing. It's really fun.
That's awesome. And I love that additional bonus gem of insight of around literally getting into the shoes or soft jumper of your target audience.
Oh yeah.
And really thinking about what motivates them and seeing both sides of it, the things that hurt them and hold them back, and the positives, the things that mean that they do great things for people. And I think it's really nice to explore that. So yeah, I think that's a great resource, both for self-insight, but also as a lens to look at people's own marketing. So that's fantastic. And thank you so much today for joining me, Denise.
Pleasure.
It's been awesome.
Thank you so much. See you soon in Wembley.
Fantastic. Yeah, looking forward to it. Now, we'll share links to Denise's website in the show notes at destressyourbusiness.com. And as regular listeners will know, I run a weekly webinar on how to free up 15 hours per week and remove the constant stress of running a business without slowing down growth. You can find out more and register. Sorry?
I said, that sounds amazing. Tell me more about that. That sounds great. Sorry.
Well, fantastic. Good, Denise. That's okay. You can find out more and register for the next one at www.airmanual.co/webinar. And one last thing, if you found this episode useful, and let's be honest, you definitely did, do yourself a favor and subscribe. I promise you loads more episodes coming up that you don't want to miss. And particularly if you found today's episode game-changing for you, Denise and I would really love to know. So add a comment or tag us in a post on social media. Send your money story. They are harvested by Denise. It fuels her on a day-to-day basis. So we will appreciate that, but also you'll help the episode reach other people that also need to learn these really important lessons. Otherwise, until next time, have fun.